You left your passport open on the seat, I said. She didn't look up at first, just slowly closed the navy blue booklet like it was alive and dangerous. Her hand trembled. Not a nervous kind of tremble, a guilty one, the kind you get when your sins crawl back into the terminal. Then, finally, she looked at me. 9 years. 9 years. And the first thing she says is, I thought you died in Michigan. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Nothing about this was funny, but because that's exactly what someone like her would say. Not hello. Not I'm sorry. Just some absurd revision of the past, as if I'd just evaporated into some cornfield after she vanished. Wrong state, I said. Try Pennsylvania. She blinked. Swallowed. I could hear it. That little click in her throat. And then she asked the question she swore she'd never ask. How long have you known? That's when the headache came back. The one that shows up whenever I remember the night with the driveway. The mailbox. The black rental car. The laughing. Her voice on the phone saying, I'm just with Dana, he's harmless. Except Dana wasn't real. And neither was the version of her I believed in. I sat down 2 seats away. Not beside her. Never again beside her. But close enough for her to smell the cheap gas station cologne I started wearing after I stopped caring. Long enough, I said. Long enough to watch you walk into this airport with the same shoes I bought you the day you left. She glanced down at them. Reflex. Shame. Confirmation. Those soft brown flats with the tiny gold strap. I knew them better than I knew my own reflection. I didn't think you'd be here, she said. I didn't think. You didn't think I'd survive? I cut in. Let's be honest. There were voices around us. Intercoms calling out delays. A baby crying somewhere near gate 11. Someone eating loudly. But none of it mattered. In that moment, it was just me, her, and the ghost of everything she never explained. She wiped under her eye. Still theatrical, even in despair. But this time it didn't feel like a performance. Something inside her was shattering, and I didn't even have to say her name to do it. And then, the part that finally cracked her. I forgave you, I whispered. Years ago. You know that. That's when she finally broke. She looked at me with a kind of horrified relief, like someone watching a house burn down, knowing they left a child inside. I don't know why I said it. Maybe I wanted her to hurt. Maybe I needed her to understand what it cost me to say those words. Either way, the damage was done. And her next sentence? I'll never forget it. You were never supposed to see that letter, she whispered, her voice barely cutting through the static of the terminal speakers. I leaned forward slowly, resting my elbows on my knees. That sentence didn't surprise me. It confirmed everything. The late-night whispering. The shredded mail I'd find in the trash. The look she gave me when I walked into a room unexpectedly, like she'd just been caught holding a gun with her fingerprints all over it. I found it on the 3rd night, I said, my voice calm. Too calm for the amount of blood thundering in my ears. Under the drawer liner. Taped to the back of your grandma's sewing box. The one you told me to never touch because it was emotionally sacred. She let out a small, stunned breath. That hurt her. Good. I kept going. You wrote about the key. The one you hid behind the 3rd tile in the guest bathroom. You said Marcus. I let the name rot on my tongue. Would know where to find it. You said you'd wait until my conference in Baltimore to disappear so no one would see the smoke. You said you couldn't live in a home built on pity. That was my favorite line, by the way. Tessaline shut her eyes tightly, like she could press the words out of existence. But I was done sparing her. Do you know what it's like, I asked, to read your partner's goodbye before they even say it to your face? To sleep beside someone who's already packed their future and shipped it to another man's apartment? To brush your teeth next to a person rehearsing their escape? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Because her fingers, those same ones that used to stroke the back of my neck when I couldn't sleep, were now gripping the handle of her carry-on so tightly her knuckles turned white. I wasn't even angry at first. I continued. I thought I'd done something to deserve it. I thought maybe I was too safe, too small, too uninteresting for you to stay. So I tried to change. I started volunteering. I signed up for improv classes. I stopped talking about my migraines. I smiled more, even when it hurt. Still nothing from her. But her face said everything. Her jaw clenched. Her eyes rimmed with that familiar red. And then one night, I said, quieter now, leaning just slightly closer, I saw you on his Facebook. In Prague, wearing my hoodie. That's when she finally broke the silence. I didn't know he posted that. I told him not to. I laughed. It came out dry and cracked. You told him not to? That's what you're going with. You left the country with him, Tessaline. You deleted every photo of us except the one with your grandmother, because she looked good in it. You called me emotionally slow to your sister. You blocked my number before you even landed. But sure, yeah, the real betrayal was a hoodie in Prague. She looked down. Her shoulders curled inward like she was trying to vanish. I was scared, she muttered. No, I said. You were finished. There's a difference. We sat in silence for a moment. Across from us, a janitor vacuumed around a row of empty chairs. A toddler dropped a juice pouch and screamed like it was the end of the world. But in our little corner of the terminal, the world had already ended. Years ago. And then she said something I didn't expect. He left me too. That stopped me. She didn't say it with anger or sadness. She said it like someone reading an obituary. Like it was just a fact of life now. Like traffic. Or rain. Last year, she added. Took everything. My savings. My mom's jewelry. Even the cat. For a second, my brain short-circuited. Not because I felt sorry for her. Not because I wanted her back. But because for the first time in nearly a decade, I saw something in her I'd never seen before. She was alone. Not pretending. Not dramatic. Not for sympathy. Truly, terrifyingly alone. And she knew I was the last person who would care. So she stared at me, waiting for judgment or mercy, or maybe both. But all I said was, boarding's in 20 minutes. Then I stood up and walked away. Her voice stopped me halfway to the window. I still have the letter, she said, eyes wide and wet. The real one. The one I never sent. I turned, slowly. You should have burned it, I said. And I meant it. I should have kept walking. I know that now. I should have let her sit there with her overpriced water bottle and her ghosts and her stupid carry-on that still had the property of CJ. Tag I'd made for her in 2013. But when someone you once planned to die beside tells you there's another letter, the real one, your legs don't always listen to your pride. So I turned back. And just like that, we were seated across from each other again, knees almost touching, the terminal lights flickering just enough to make it all feel like a dream I used to have on bad nights. I don't understand, I said finally. You wrote the first one. I read it. I memorized it. What do you mean, the real one? Tessaline opened her purse and pulled out a worn envelope, folded twice, edges softened like it had been opened 100 times. She didn't hand it to me. She just placed it on the seat between us, like it might explode if touched too quickly. I wrote 2, she said. One for him. One for you. Only one of them was ever supposed to be read. I stared at the envelope. No name on it. Just a shaky, uneven red ink stain across the flap, like it had once been sealed with lipstick and then regretted. Why didn't I get this one? I asked. Because I got scared. Not of what it said, but of what it would make you do. You were fragile back then. You smiled like a person trying not to drown. I thought if I gave you that letter, you'd never let me leave. I didn't know what to say to that. Was that supposed to be compassion? Cowardice? I didn't even care anymore. My hands were clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms, trying to keep my voice from cracking. She continued, quietly. The one you found. The one under the drawer liner. That was the version I wrote after Marcus said he'd handle the paperwork. It was cold. Strategic. Clinical. Like a lawyer ghost wrote my betrayal. It wasn't real. I almost laughed again, but this time it came out more like a cough. You mean it wasn't romantic enough? Sorry, I didn't realize I was grading your breakup drafts. Her jaw tensed, but she didn't retaliate, which scared me more than if she had. I reached down and touched the envelope with 2 fingers. It felt like old skin, paper soaked in regret. Is this why you panicked when you saw me? I asked. Because this thing still exists? No, she said, looking me directly in the eye for the first time since we sat down. I panicked because I've been carrying it around for 5 years, and I didn't know what I'd do if I actually saw you. I picked it up, didn't open it, just held it, like something sacred, or cursed. And then, because some part of me still wanted to be the bigger person, or maybe just the one with control, I slid it into my coat pocket without reading a word. I'll decide when to open it, I said. Fair. We sat in silence again, not awkward this time, just heavy. Like the air around us had thickened. Something about the moment felt off, though. Like I was missing a piece of the puzzle. My brain kept circling back to one thing she said. Only one of them was ever supposed to be read. You said you wrote 2, I said slowly. But I only ever found one. Tessaline hesitated. That's because Marcus found the other one before I could get it to you. That was when my stomach dropped. I turned sharply toward her. He read it. She nodded once. Tight. Small. And then he burned it. My hands started shaking. That cold, electric shake that creeps up your spine when you realize you've been handled. That your version of the truth has been edited by someone else's agenda for nearly a decade. He told me he gave it to you, she added. Said you read it. That you tore it up. My pulse spiked. And you believed him? She didn't answer. Of course she believed him. That was the whole game, wasn't it? She left, handed her story over to someone else, and then walked away before asking whether the final chapter was even true. And suddenly, it all came flooding back. The anonymous messages in 2018. The block numbers calling at 2 a.m. The postcard I received with no return address, just a single line. The version you read wasn't the one she meant. I thought I was losing my mind. I even went to a sleep specialist. Started journaling. Started praying. And all this time, he had my truth. Burned it. Buried it. Rewrote my grief in real time. You don't get to act like a victim, I said finally, venom in my voice now. You let him erase me. Then you let him rewrite me. And now, after all this time, you're just what? Handing me a sequel? She didn't flinch. I'm not here to be forgiven, she said. I'm here because I need your help. I blinked. That was new. What the hell could you possibly need from me? She looked down at her bag, then back at me. Then she whispered, because I think someone's following me. And I think it has something to do with the letter. The sentence hung in the air like a slow leak from a gas line. Invisible, silent, dangerous. Someone's following me, she said again, softer this time, like she wasn't entirely convinced she should have said it at all. And I think it has something to do with the letter. For the first time since seeing her again, I actually forgot to be angry. You're serious, I said, narrowing my eyes. She nodded. I started noticing it 6 months ago. First in the background of photos. Then outside my building. At first I thought I was being paranoid. I mean, let's be real, I haven't exactly been mentally grounded for a while. She said that last part with a bitter smile, like she knew how little credit she had left. I said nothing. Let her talk. There's this man, she continued. Always the same coat. Light gray, soft shoulders, tan collar. I thought it was just coincidence. Big city, right? Everyone wears neutral tones. But then it wasn't just outside my apartment. He showed up outside my therapist's office. Then my sister's neighborhood. Then, 2 weeks ago, he was standing on the opposite platform when I was catching a late train out of Brooklyn. Just staring. Did you report it? I asked. She gave me a sharp look, the kind that said don't insult me without actually saying it. Yeah, once. NYPD basically shrugged. Said unless he touches me, there's nothing they can do. Classic. And you think this has to do with the letter? I don't know, she admitted. I didn't at first. But then I remembered something Marcus said right before he left me. Something I brushed off at the time. He told me I should have shredded the original. And when I asked what he meant, he said, there's more than one version of the truth, Tess. You better hope nobody finds the wrong one. I felt a chill crawl up the back of my neck. You think he was talking about this letter? I asked. She nodded again. After he left, I went through our storage unit. The box where I kept the original, it was gone. At the time I thought he destroyed it. But then last month, someone slipped this under my door. She fished into her coat and pulled out a crumpled envelope. Not the same one from earlier. This one was cheap, unsealed, and slightly torn at the corner. She handed it to me carefully, like it might be laced with something. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Photocopied. Not handwritten. Not signed. But I recognized the phrasing immediately. It was mine. It was a copy of my old note. The one I wrote her years ago. The night I found her crying on the kitchen floor after her boss had humiliated her at that conference in Dallas. I'd slipped the note into her laptop bag. Told her she was stronger than anyone gave her credit for. That I loved her enough to wait forever if I had to. And here it was. In faded ink. Scanned. With a sentence at the bottom I didn't write. He waited. You vanished. And now he's watching you vanish again. I looked up at her. What the hell is this? Tessaline looked pale now. Not shaken. Rattled. Her voice dropped. I don't know. But someone has access to things they shouldn't. Things that were in our apartment. Things only Marcus and I ever saw. I thought it was just some ex playing games, or some twisted closure attempt. But then, she hesitated. Swallowed. Then I came home 2 nights ago, and found a small envelope on my pillow. No name. Just one word, typed in block letters. Rewrite. I exhaled through my nose slowly, trying to calm the panic starting to press at my ribs. This was no longer about old pain. This was something else now, a thread that had been quietly unraveling in the background of our lives and was now coiling around our necks. You don't think Marcus? He's off-grid, she interrupted. Last I heard, he moved to Uruguay with some crypto lunatic. He hasn't used his bank accounts in 8 months. His family hired a PI. No one's heard from him since February. That was the moment I knew we were in trouble. Because as much as I hated him, as much as I wanted to believe he was just some manipulative prick with a scarf addiction, the truth was more complicated now. And messier. And crawling back from wherever we left it. I stood up abruptly, the letter still in my hand. Looked around the terminal. Nothing unusual. Families. Business travelers. A guy in a Pikachu hoodie arguing with a barista. Normal airport chaos. Except for one man, about 50 feet away, seated by a vending machine, reading a newspaper, who was still holding it upside down 10 minutes later. Gray jacket. Tan collar. I sat down slowly, leaned toward her without looking directly at the man. He's here. Tessaline stiffened. She didn't move. Didn't turn. Just whispered. Which side? 10 o'clock. She exhaled once. Shallow. Silent. Then we don't have much time, she said. And I didn't know if she meant before our flight, or before something much worse caught up to us. Whatever you do, I whispered, don't look back yet. Tessaline didn't move. Not a twitch. Her breath caught in her throat like it didn't want to come out in front of the wrong person. She was staring straight ahead at the flight board, her pupils dialed wide, like she was watching a crime scene unfold inside her own brain. Is he still reading that newspaper? She murmured. Yeah. Upside down. We sat frozen in our seats while Gate D7 called boarding for a flight to Montreal. A group of teenagers with matching duffel bags scrambled past us. A flight attendant with cracked lipstick gave us a bored glance. The world was still moving, but our part of it had gone very, very still. He's been following me since March, she said, barely audible. At first, he kept his distance, just across the street, or a few rows back at the cafe. But then last week, he was closer. I mean close. I was walking home from the grocery store. It was raining. He passed me on the sidewalk, brushed against my arm, didn't say a word, just smiled. The word hit me like a rotten breath. Smiled. Did you get a picture of him? I asked. I tried, she said, looking down. Every time I pull out my phone, he's gone before the shutter loads. It's like he knows the exact moment to disappear. I pulled out my phone, opened the camera app, and angled it casually over my shoulder, pretending to check a notification. I held it for 5 seconds. 10. Then slowly panned it left. The vending machine was still there, but the man was gone. Shit. Tessaline turned her head slightly, just enough to glance without being obvious. Was he still seated? Not anymore, I said. He vanished. She closed her eyes and pinched the bridge of her nose like she was trying not to vomit. That's what he does, she said. He watches until you see him, then he fades. Like a bad habit. I didn't know what to say to that. It sounded insane. The kind of thing someone says when they haven't slept in 3 days and everyone around them keeps using the word delusional in hushed tones. But I believed her. Because that feeling, that wrongness, that static buzz of danger in your teeth feeling, it wasn't just hers anymore. It was crawling up my spine too. I don't think this is about the letter anymore, I said quietly. She looked at me with eyes that had already guessed what I was about to say. I think it's about what the letter led to. A pause. Not a dramatic one. A broken one. You still haven't read it, have you? She asked. I shook my head. She leaned closer. Her voice dropped so low I barely caught the words. Then you don't know what he did. I swallowed hard. My mouth was suddenly dry. There was a humming behind my ears that might have been blood, or fear, or both. Who? Marcus? No, she said. The man with the jacket. The one who's been watching me. The one who's been here before. Something in the way she said it made me flinch. What do you mean, been here before? She hesitated. Then, back in 2016, before I left, the week before I walked out, I saw him. I thought he was just a loiterer outside the apartment. But then I saw him again. On the train. In a bookstore. In a pharmacy parking lot at 2 a.m. And when I asked Marcus who he was, Marcus told me not to worry. I blinked slowly. Why would you bring that up now? Because the day I left, I didn't just leave because of you. Or the letter? Or even Marcus? She leaned even closer now, close enough for me to see the tiny scar under her right eyelid, the one I always thought looked like a comma trying to interrupt her thoughts. I left because I was scared something was coming. Something neither of you understood. Marcus thought he had control over it. You didn't even know it existed. But I saw it. In the way the man looked at me. In the way he never blinked. I stared at her. You're telling me this now? I didn't want to believe it then. I barely want to believe it now. But he's not just a stalker. He's something else. Something that waits. For what? For cracks, she said. In people. In memory. In time. I don't know how to explain it. But I know this. He's not following me because of what I did to you. He's following us both because of what you might do next. I didn't even ask what that meant. I already knew. The letter. I reached into my coat and pulled it out. Still sealed. Still heavier than paper should be. She looked at it like it was a live wire. You want answers? She said. Open it somewhere far from here. And whatever you do, don't read it alone. I stared at her. Why? Because if you do, she said, rising slowly, her voice suddenly calm, eerily calm. He'll know what version of you to keep. Then she walked away, and I sat there, clutching a letter written nearly a decade ago, wondering if this whole thing was just grief, or if we were both living in the echo of something that was never meant to be remembered. I didn't read the letter on the plane. I couldn't. Something in the way Tessaline had said it, don't read it alone, kept ringing in my ears. It wasn't just a warning. It was a plea. A final thread from someone who had seen what happens when curiosity outruns caution. So I waited. The flight to Pittsburgh felt longer than it should have. I stared at the seatback screen, but never turned it on. Every sound, every cough or tray click around me, felt exaggerated. Like I was trapped in a slow-motion loop, and the air was getting thicker. I kept one hand in my coat pocket the whole time, gripping the envelope like a talisman. When I got to my hotel, a grim little place off the highway with beige everything and that stale industrial soap smell, I dropped my bag, kicked off my shoes, and sat on the edge of the bed. The envelope was creased now from my grip, still sealed, still trembling slightly in my hand. I told myself I'd wait until morning, until I could find someone to sit with me. But who? Hannah and I hadn't spoken since I delayed our trip. My sister barely tolerated my calls. And who else would I ask to witness something like this? There was no one left from that version of my life. So I opened it. The seal gave way with an almost reluctant tear, like it didn't want to be opened. Inside was a single page, written in blue ink. Her handwriting. Unmistakable. Precise. Feminine. Too perfect. Almost like she practiced writing pain without letting it touch her. I began reading. Slowly. Carefully. Every line stitched with a tension I couldn't place. Corbin, I wanted to give you the version of the truth that didn't make me look like a monster, but I think you deserve the one that hurts. Because it's the real one. You were never the problem. That's what people say when they want to leave gently, but I mean it literally. You weren't the problem. You were absent from it entirely. That scared me more than anything. I stopped there. My chest tightened. What the hell did that even mean? There were nights I watched you sleep, and I tried to love you harder, better. But something inside me kept pulling away. Not from you. From the timeline where I was still the woman you thought I was. That version of me had already died. You just hadn't noticed yet. Marcus didn't steal me. He just happened to show up when I was already leaving in my head. He gave it shape, escape, direction. But even he wasn't the destination. I wasn't running toward him. I was running away from what you were about to become. I paused again. My eyes went back over that last line 3 times. What I was about to become. I don't know if you remember the blackouts. My stomach dropped. You called them migraines. You'd lose time. 5 minutes here. An hour there. Once, a whole afternoon. You'd tell me you just needed to lie down. But your eyes would go empty. Your voice would change. You'd say things I didn't understand. The first time it happened, you told me the house was folding. You said the light in the bathroom wasn't ours. That something was in the hallway wearing your name. I laughed. I thought you were half asleep. But then it kept happening. I was trembling now. My mouth was dry. I had no memory of saying these things. I recorded you once. It's still out there. In a folder Marcus swore he'd never open. You stared straight into the lens and said, "There's someone living between my choices. He's memorizing the spaces I forget." The room around me blurred. My breathing turned shallow. That's when I started seeing him. The man in gray. You think he follows me? Maybe. but I think he was yours first. And maybe still is. I stood up, letter still in my hand. My legs were numb. I walked to the mirror over the dresser, not to look at myself, but to check if I still cast a reflection that looked like it belonged to me. I left because staying meant watching you unravel. And I didn't have the strength to go down with you. That makes me weak. I know. But if you're reading this, really reading this, then that means you've seen him again too. And that means he's decided you're ready to remember. The letter ended there. No goodbye, no name. Just a small ink blot in the corner, like her pen had hesitated before pressing a final word that never came. I dropped the page on the bed, walked backward to the wall, pressed my back against it like it would keep the room from breathing in on me. My ears were ringing, my pulse stuttering. I had no memory of saying those things. No recollection of light folding, or names in hallways, or blackouts long enough for recordings. And yet, there were gaps in my past. Days I couldn't fully reconstruct. Journals with pages torn out. Contacts in my phone I couldn't place. And now I couldn't shake this gnawing truth. What if Tessaline didn't destroy me? What if she left me to stop something I started? Then the knock came. 3 short taps. Then silence. I stood there, frozen, as the cheap hotel air conditioner kicked on and blew cold across the back of my neck. My room was on the 3rd floor. I hadn't told anyone I was here. I hadn't booked under my name. The knock came again. No voice. No movement outside the peephole. Just 3 steady knocks. And for the first time since the letter, I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. The sound of my own voice, saying things I never remembered saying. The knock didn't come a 3rd time. That's the part that should have comforted me. It didn't. It never does. Because 3 knocks is just enough to pull you into the moment, to anchor your heartbeat to a new rhythm. And then the silence afterward is where the real terror lives. I didn't move. Not at first. I stood there against the wall like it might open up and swallow me back into some version of myself that made more sense. The air in the hotel room had gone still. Heavier. Like the molecules themselves had slowed down to watch what I would do next. I didn't look through the peephole. I should have. Any rational person would. But I was long past rational. Instead, I picked up my phone and opened the camera, switched it to video, and held it up toward the door without stepping closer. I zoomed in. Nothing. No one. Just the hallway. Beige wallpaper. A room service tray 2 doors down with an untouched apple and a half-finished Diet Coke. The kind of thing people walk past without noticing. But that was the problem. There were no footsteps either. No fading shuffle. No door closing. Not even the whisper of weight on carpet. Whoever had knocked, if anyone had knocked at all, had vanished into absolute stillness. The kind that eats sound instead of echoing it. I slid my back down the wall and sat on the floor. My hands were shaking. I didn't bother pretending it was anything else. Then I heard something worse than the knocks. My voice. Not from me, from inside the room. It was faint, barely there, but unmistakable. A whisper. And it came from the closet. I didn't speak. Didn't ask who was there. I just waited. My whole body trying to shrink into my own bones. Then it came again. A perfect imitation of my own voice. Low and flat and distorted like it had been rehearsed through layers of glass. What do you think you forgot? I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. My breath caught somewhere between ribs and reason. I grabbed the chair by the desk and held it in front of me like a shield, like that would somehow stop my own voice from stepping out of a dark closet. The closet door didn't open, but I knew something had changed. Something had moved inside me. A memory, jagged, fragmentary, began clawing its way forward from the pit of my stomach. Not even a scene, just the weight of it. The smell of something burned. The sound of dripping water. And a word, not spoken, but felt, like static under skin. Ellering. That word meant nothing. Not yet. But it hit like something I used to know. I stood up, cautiously, and approached the closet. Each step felt like an echo of a mistake I hadn't yet made. I pulled the door open with one motion, like tearing off a bandage from an old wound you were pretending wasn't still bleeding. It was empty. Just my bag. My coat. The iron I hadn't used. Nothing out of place. Except for the note. Folded in half. Sitting atop my shoes. Printed on the hotel stationery. I reached down slowly and turned it over. It was blank, until I tilted it toward the light. Then the invisible ink revealed itself, faint and uneven. The version you live in is not the version you wrote. I sat back on the bed, the chair still in my hands, and stared at the message until the words blurred. What version? What did that even mean? Suddenly, Tessaline's voice returned in my head, like a recording I never agreed to make. He's been here before. He's not following me. He's waiting. The man in the gray jacket. The upside-down newspaper. The vanishing hallway footsteps. None of it was coincidence. None of it was imagined. They weren't hunting me. They were watching the outcome. That night in 2016, the one where she said I went quiet, where my eyes emptied out. I started to remember pieces now. How the power had flickered. How the digital clocks reset themselves to 3:17 a.m. even though it was still daylight. How I had woken up outside on the porch, barefoot, with a Polaroid in my hand of a room I'd never seen before. Back then, I'd blamed stress, or sleepwalking, or grief. I even told Tessaline it was probably just a weird dream, a half-awake fugue. But now, I realized something else. The version I've been living in might not be the first one. The dreams, the static, the sense of watching my own life from a few inches outside my body. It was never trauma. It was never heartbreak. It was something stitching me back together wrong. The door creaked behind me. Not the closet. The entrance. It hadn't opened. But now, light from the hallway was leaking into the corners of the room, bending at angles it shouldn't bend, casting shapes that didn't match any of the furniture. And behind it, a silhouette. Not of a man. Of me. Standing outside the door, perfectly still. And then, just as I reached for my phone to prove to myself this was real, just as I tried to remember what year it actually was, a voice, my voice, whispered from behind the doorframe. You were the one who asked to forget. We just granted the request. I didn't open the door. Not that night. I sat still, the phone gripped in my hand, screen dimming to black, the light outside my room pulsing like a heartbeat, steady, slow, waiting. The silhouette of myself never moved. Not once. Just stood there like a mirror I never meant to face. But it didn't speak again. It didn't knock. It just faded. Not vanished. Not like the man in the gray jacket. It softened. Became less real by the second. Until it was nothing more than a distortion in the light. A shadow without a shape. And when it was gone, I sat there for what felt like an hour. 2. I think I cried. Not out of fear, but out of something deeper, the kind of cry that lives in your bones. The kind you don't get to choose. Because the truth had finally surfaced, and it wasn't as monstrous as I thought. I had forgotten something. I had asked to forget. The blackouts, the static, the strange dreams. They weren't the start of something broken. They were the cost of rewriting a life that had gone off course. At some point, maybe on that porch, maybe in that missing hour, I had made a choice. Not consciously, not with language, but with will. To bury a version of myself that had spiraled too far. The version that had scared Tessaline. The version that had looked in the mirror and seen someone else staring back. And whatever that force was, whether it was real, imagined, spiritual, or quantum, it had granted the request. But healing isn't a clean wipe. It's not a reboot. It's editing, and edits always leave traces. That's what the man in gray was. Not a stalker. Not a demon. A trace. A fracture in the glass of reality where the light hit funny, and something old slipped through. Once I understood that, it didn't scare me anymore. In the morning, the letter was still on the bed. But the other note, the one that appeared in invisible ink, was gone. Not torn. Not moved. Just gone. I didn't check out right away. I sat by the window with a cup of burnt lobby coffee and watched the highway until the sun rose high enough to make the shadows shrink. Then I called Tessaline. She answered on the third ring. You read it, she said. Yeah. A long silence. You okay? Another pause. Then I said something I didn't expect. I think I am. She exhaled. It sounded like relief. Or maybe just closure. I'm sorry, she said. For all of it. I know. And I meant it. For the first time, I really did. We didn't talk long. No reunion. No grand reconnection. Just a shared breath across miles. The final note in a song that had played too long in both of our heads. I flew home 2 days later. Back to my apartment. Back to Laundry, my cat, who blinked at me like I'd never left. Back to the job I still didn't love, but no longer resented. Back to a version of my life that felt quiet in a way I could finally appreciate. Hannah and I met for coffee a week after I got back. I told her the truth, not all the wild parts, not the doppelganger in the hallway, but the real truth. That I'd been broken once. That I'd buried a part of myself. That I'd made someone else carry the weight of my forgetting. And she didn't run. She listened. She smiled. She stayed. We don't always get to rewrite our endings. Sometimes we don't get to explain the chapters that broke us. But if we're lucky, if we pay attention, we get to live into the next paragraph. One word at a time. I haven't seen the man in gray since that night. But I don't think he's gone. I think he's watching someone else now. Someone who whispered to themselves one quiet evening, "Please take this part of me away." I hope they remember what I almost forgot. You're not meant to erase the past. You're meant to survive it. And now, finally, I have.